Hi, Limitless Live team. So glad you all are taking a small part of your day to join us. And I'm very excited about today's conversation, especially because I'm being joined by fellow room tilter and mindset coach, Mike Lewis. Where is he?
Hey,
Hi.
what's going
Yay, Krista's here. Krista.
on? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. How's your Tuesday going?
You know what? It's interesting. So, I live here in Florida, and it's a little bit of hysteria
Oh,
because,
talk to me.
in fact, oh my gosh, it literally, like literally just now, it just started to downpour. Um, but yeah, the hurricane's coming, and we're prepared. We're just gonna hunker down and see how it turns out.
I love this. So, getting neutral. Are we getting neutral about the hurricane coming through?
Yeah. You know what? It sometimes when there's like big, huge events that you don't have any control over, it's
Hmm.
easy to be neutral, right? It's a lot easier to be neutral. Um, but we did with the preparation that we needed to do, and that's all we can do at this point. Hope and pray for the
Yeah.
or the least.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, keep safe. That's what's coming in. And also, I know Josh is part of our team, is also, I just texted him. I'm like, hey, can you look at this email? He's like, can you hold on? Because we're kind of battening down the hatches. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, there's a hurricane coming. So stay safe for everybody in Florida. And I'm excited you could still join us, even amidst a hurricane.
Oh yeah, no, well, I wouldn't miss it. We had a great session several weeks ago that we had planned out, and we had some difficulty. So I'm looking forward to doing this one with you, and I think we got a great topic to discuss.
Yeah, great. Thanks for teeing me up there. Transformational Tuesdays. So when I called you, I was like, "Oh, we're going to talk about Transformational Tuesdays. What do you think?"
Mhm.
And one of the things we talked about was being intentional.
Yes.
So for transformation to happen, we have to get really intentional. And one of the things that you talked about, so that's the first subject I wanted to talk about,
Hmm.
is how do we get intentional? How does Mike get intentional when it comes to transformation?
Yeah, it's like when we were talking about this, to kind of prepare. Um, I think the common idea that we both had in terms of transformation is it turns into something that we want to do, right? And a lot of times, yeah, the action will get us to where we want to be. But we both agree that what's really super important is really having that vision, like having a very clear idea as to what you will become or what you will look like when the transformation has completed after you've gone through the process. And I just think that's just so important. And when we talk about visualizing and envisioning what you want to be and what you want to become after a transformation, I think the best way to do that is utilizing those visualization techniques of using your five senses to really bring home and hit home who it is that you want to become. Who are you going to look like? What's the difference between you know, Coach Mike today and Coach Mike 9 months from now? Am I going to have a full head of hair? Am I going to be 20 pounds lighter? Right? What am I going to look like? Right? How is this transformation going to impact me to the point where my appearance is different? And you begin to really visualize that. You begin to see that. You ask yourself, how is it going to actually feel? How am I going to feel? Am I going to feel stronger? Am I going to feel just a happier person overall? And you begin to embody those feelings. And essentially, what you're doing is you're starting to step into the person that you are desiring to become in the present. And when you're doing that in the present and the time comes, then you've already become that person. So that visualization process is super important, and being very intentional about what it looks like, what it smells like, what it tastes like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, using all those senses.
Well, I'm going to throw out a question to the group is so you can answer via chat. Have you ever used visualization when you're trying to transform? when you're trying to prepare for your goal? Have you ever used it and in what context? So throw that up there. Or if you've worked with a client that has wanted to transform and you've helped them utilize visualization, and how have you? So feel free to throw it up there in the chat. For you, Mike, if you used it for yourself, or how have you used it? Give us an example, and I can give an example of mine too, but give us an example.
Yeah, I mean, the earliest ways that I used visualization were just as an athlete. And, you know, I did it probably more so. I don't even know where I don't think anybody ever taught me the idea or the concept. I think just, you know, one of the benefits of being an athlete, sometimes, you know, you can be really in tune with your body and your mind. So as an athlete, at a young age, I used to visualize. But then as I got older and started really learning actual skills and techniques from a mental and a psychological standpoint, then I think I started becoming far more intentional about it, about really utilizing those five senses. So the very first time was as an athlete, but I do it till this day. You know, if I know that I have a challenging, you know, session coming up with someone, or a challenging speaking engagement or something, I will visualize that. I visualize, how do I want to sound? What will I sound like? What will I look like? What am I going to be wearing? What are the conversations that I'm going to have after the event? So I'd use it on a not quite a daily basis, but I do use visualization when I know I've got an event coming up, or something that I really want to accomplish, and I really want to be clear on.
Yeah, Krista's very familiar with this. Another room tilter. I visualize myself loving. Oh, visualize success as if it has already happened. I do this before I get in front of an audience. I also do this with my family. Oh, I love that idea. I visualize myself loving on them as an older version of myself. Oh, that's such a good. That's such a good one. And Krista's kids just went to high school, 3 of them. So she just posted some pictures. I love this concept of visualization. Very powerful. One is I've used it as an athlete, but it was interesting because I follow Arnold Schwarzenegger, and think about like a guy in Austria who is in this tiny little podunk town, who wants to become a bodybuilder when no one understands what that is in his village, right? And then, you know, he comes to Hollywood, and then he wants to be an actor. No one that looks like him, no one that sounds like him would ever hire him, right? And he has those stories. And then he becomes the governor, right? So like 3 fantastical things. And one of the things he talks about is his power of visualization, that yeah, people around me, they didn't think I was going to be able to do it. There were no examples, right? There are no examples of anyone like me or what I want to do. So the only power I had was my mind to be able to visualize it, to see it. I think about my own clients too. When they utilize this, they do it in meetings. They want to speak up more, or they want to. I work with a lot of women who are sometimes the only women in a conference room, and we work a lot on that. We work a lot on, how do you want to feel? And I loved how you said like the 5 senses, because we work on, how do you want to show up? What are you going to be wearing? Where are people going to be sitting? So you've already lived that experience.
Right. Absolutely. You know, the funny thing is, getting back to Arnold Schwarzenegger, there's a special on Netflix that recently
aired. Yeah. Good one. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really interesting, right? So you said, you know, coming from where he was from in Austria, small town, he didn't really have any examples. But the one example that he did have was the movie Conan. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And he loved the movie, and he wanted to, I can't remember the star at that time, but he wanted to be just like that person. Fast forward, you know, whatever it was, 20, 30 years later, he's starring in the movie Conan. I mean, I can't think of I can think of more examples, but that's just a great example of someone who saw something, literally embodied and visualized that person or that persona, and literally became it and did it. So great example there. Yes.
Yeah, I do. I can talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger for a long time. I just think it's fascinating what he did with his life. It's pretty fascinating. Rebecca talks about her competitively running and visualizing herself winning races down to seeing people, and it wasn't winning the race. I was beating my personal best time. Oh, that's interesting. It wasn't just the outcomes, but it was everything else as well. I've not done this in my career aspirations as an adult though. So can we maybe use that and pivot a little bit of like, how can we do this in our careers? How can we utilize visualization? If one of the questions I did have for you is, what if we have trouble really clarifying? Because I remember watching Arnold Schwarzenegger and thinking to myself, I'm not totally clear, on my vision of where I want my career, because there's so many things that could be in play. Do you have any thoughts or some tools of how to begin to start to visualize? Maybe we don't have a clear picture, but how do we get clearer?
Yeah, I think, one of the first things is being aware of the language that we're using, right? So when we say things like, I don't really know what I want my career to be, well, that's not setting you up to have a vision of what you want your career to be, right? So you should change the language. Or how can we ask the question to ourselves? How can we change the language so that the language is conducive to where we want to be and what we want to become when that time happens? So sometimes asking ourselves the question or asking ourselves the problem that we already know, we just start kind of ruminating and creating and not solving the problem. We just ask ourselves over and over, I'm not sure I'm not sure how I want my career to go. But if we ask ourselves, in 10 years, I want to be doing this, or in 10 years, I want to be here, that begins to create, now we can work backwards, right? And we can kind of create a pathway to literally getting there. So I think it starts with the language, right? Trying to identify, are we using the right language that's going to get us to where we want to go? And if the answer is no, okay, well, how do I just need to change up the language so that it's conducive to where I want to go?
I love it. It's like an open door rather than a closed door. We
Mm-hmm.
think about that as like coaches when we ask questions like, have we closed the door on introspection or have we opened the door to introspection? But I love how you called me out. That's okay. I was like, I literally just asked myself that question this morning. Like, where am I going? What am I doing? So I'm going to take a page out of your book and help myself too.
Rebecca
Um,
has a nice question in the chat here. She says, a question for you both. What if you do not have a clear vision of what you want for yourself in your career, just like you had mentioned? You may know the industry and feeling fulfillment and you want to experience, but don't have a clear image of the exact position, right? So I think it goes back to, thank you for the question, Rebecca, but I think it goes back to kind of what we were just saying, right? Is how do we begin to first change the language and then begin to put ourselves in that position and go back to thinking about, what is it going to feel like? What is it going to sound like? How am I going to sound? How am I going to feel? What am I going to look like?
I like, so I'm going to play off of Krista's answer. And she said, I anchor in my values. They're my GPS. And I start to play with visualizing the what after the why. So I think about it this similarly, but I'm using the words of, what do I already know? What do I know now? I know here are my values. I know that I take an inventory. Here are my values. Here are my strengths. These are the things I care about. There's an exercise, even I think you even thought about too, of like 10 years from now, but some people do it of like when you're 65, looking back in your career and you're having a big party to kind of end up your career,
Yeah.
or whatever age you want to end up your career, who's in the room? And what
Mm-hmm.
are they saying? What are your colleagues saying? What are your family members saying? Like, what are people saying about you? So it's also another values exercise. So I think first I have to start with what's in my closet. I think about like my pantry. What's in my pantry? I have to start there before I start adding more things to the pantry. So my values, what are my strengths? What do I like? What are organizations I like? So I've been doing some of that career work too. What do I like? What do I want to achieve? One of the things that have been helpful too, if I feel like it's too big of a question, is I'll do, what do I want more of and what do I want less of?
Mm-hmm.
Like I want more working with people like Mike, Yay. And Krista. And I want less of a large organization, let's say, or whatever it is. Like, what do I want more of less of? So maybe starting really small. So I think I like to gather that inventory first. So like, what do I have today? And then start asking myself that questions, because it can, for some people, it can start to feel overwhelming.
Right. I think that's great. And when we were planning this, we also, you kind of had a really good point, and I think you said we have to think about, what are we gaining as we go through a transformation, but then we also have to give ourselves some thought process to what are we losing, right?
Yeah.
And that's super important. And do you remember when we had discussed that? Can you share a little bit about that? Because I thought that was so key. We always, when we think about transformation, we think about it always in the positives, the greatness that's going to come from it. And we don't necessarily give intention or attention to the things or the people or the relationships or the things that we might be losing after the transformation is complete.
Well, I think it's attached. The question is a very basic question. It's a very 101. If you start ICF coaching, they go, "What are you going to gain with this change?" Right? Like, what are the positive gains for this change? And so we talk about that. I think it's really important if you're unclear. I think it does help you to get more clear, right? So, what are you going to gain? What is it that you really want, right? If you're going to lose weight, what are the gains that you want from it? What's so important to you? And I think it is important to get, that's why the values are important too. Like, what is your why behind the transformation?
Mm-hmm.
What is the deep why? And so when you talk about what are you going to gain, that's part of it, is like, what's so important about this change for me? And then there's that introspective work, but also what you lose. I think that's important too, is like, we might be afraid or we might be muddled in our transition because we're not ready for the transition. We might want something, but we might be afraid of losing something at the same time. Yes, it's like great to, let's say, I use the example of quitting smoking. Like, it's great to like quit smoking because I'm going to be more healthy, but I'm also going to lose people that do this with me on a break. I'm going to lose that break too. So I think it's just, you have to get clear in that transition. So hopefully those kind of questions help you get more clear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the other, we also kind of really just talked about, embodying,
Yeah.
the vision as well. I mean, I have some of my own ideas about, embodying that. Like, what does that mean to me? But can you share a little bit about what, to you, what do you think embodying the actual transformation or the vision that you're going after should be like?
Yeah, I think this is around Rebecca too, because I am very resonant with where Rebecca is, because I can't quite visualize like clearly like Arnold Schwarzenegger like being Conan in a movie set. Like, I'm not there yet. But what I do know, and because I'm a very feelings oriented person, very feelings oriented, I know how I want to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that when I go to work, I don't want to feel overly stressed, overly anxious. I want to love the people that I'm working with. I want to work joyfully hard. And I know what that feels like. It doesn't feel like panic. It doesn't feel like pacing too fast. It just doesn't feel, it feels positive. I might be tired, but it feels fine. So I actually embody that. I think about what that feels like if I had a good work day and how I want to feel. And what I do is, in the midst of the transition, I live that. I do it. I actually like work that way.
Right.
And I remember doing that when I was working at another job that was very, very stressful. And I was like, this is not what I want to be doing. Like, this needs to change. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I know it's not this. So what I started to do, and what helped me start to shift to get clear, is I would wake up and be like, this is how I want to feel.
Yeah.
And it would help me start to say no to things. It kind of like helped me get very clear on the pathway forward. And I ended up leaving the position because I was like, you know what? This isn't it. And it gave me the strength to do that. So embodying is very important. And it's the senses. It's like, how do I want to feel? How do I want to dress? How do I want to show up? What does this feel like?
Yes. Yes. I think for me, the first time someone made the suggestion to me to embody, who I wanted to be or what I was going after. I was in college, and we had a great career services department at shout out to the University of New Haven, Pam Summers. I don't think she's there anymore, but I was a sports management major, and I was going for this interview for this job. For me at the time was like the biggest thing. It was like to be able to leave college, to be able to have an interview and have a job lined up before you graduate college. I mean, it was just like, man, you're ahead of the curve, right?
Crushing it.
And I remember she said something to me. She said, just be the person that they want to hire. She said, that's all you have to do. Just go into the interview and act as if you already are the person that has the job. And I thought of that, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, rather than me trying to prove that I'm the right person, I just need to go in and show them that I'm the right person. Like, I already have the job. So I'm embodying the person that they need to fill that role. So I think that was the first time that someone actually had kind of posed that to me and said, you know what, just be the person now. Be that person now. And there wasn't really a whole bunch, there wasn't any instruction or anything. It was just a statement that she made. And it just really stuck with me. And I ended up getting the job.
Look at that, crushing it already, right out of the gate. But it reminds me of in sports, the active as if is really important. And I'll tell you in fencing why it's important. So acting as if is important because it imbues an abundance mindset, and you're not in lack mindset. When you're in lack mindset, what happens is that you start to think about all the things you're not doing well, and your brain gets really cluttered. So you're thinking about you're thinking about failure, right? And like, I hope I, win, right? But when you're in this abundance mindset, you literally move differently. So in fencing, you actually hit the target that you want to hit because you're in abundance mindset. If I have lack mindset, right, at all, when I'm trying to hit the target, I'm going to miss. And I have a very small target area to hit. So it is literally like, you have to have that abundance mindset. You have to be able to embody and act as if I'm ready and prepared. I'm here. I can do this. And also it helps to clear the mind, because if you're kind of busy mind, then you're not really focused on the right thing at the right time, and you cannot hit the target. So it doesn't surprise me, because you're authentically connected to your answers when you're doing the interview. You know that you can do the job. There's no questioning yourself. So all of those things come up with that abundance mindset. Rebecca, I want to get to your question. She said, do you both believe that our thoughts and feelings will draw to us the experiences that reflect our thoughts and feelings? I ask because when Iris referenced feeling muddled because we may deep down fear losing or letting go of something, we will not draw to us the thing we desire because of that muddledness. I think it's a great question, because we're human beings and we're not going to have clarity all the time. And that's okay. And it doesn't mean that I like asking the cosmic waitress for things. I go, and if you don't ask the cosmic waitress for exactly what you want, it can muddle it back. And that's what we think. But I think if you go from this place of like, I'm feeling kind of muddled right now, I need clarity. And so maybe that's the request, rather than thinking like 10 steps ahead of like, I want that clear vision. Is what's the next? So this is Limitless Minds. What's the next best step to help me with the clarity? What's the next question I need to ask to help me get unmuddled? The muddledness is okay. And it's not going to bring anything bad. It just means that you need more clarity, and that's okay too. So you have to just think about these smaller steps. I think about the questions that you need to ask to get yourself through the muddledness.
Yes, excellent. And the way you just worded that was so perfect, because we've heard the equation before: thoughts plus feelings equals behavior equals performance. And essentially, so to answer your question, Rebecca, I think yes and no, right? I think you can have the thoughts and the feelings, and perhaps those experiences will bring you closer to what you're trying to accomplish or what you're trying to do. But the missing piece is the action, is the work that you're doing afterwards, after you have that thought and feeling. what is the work that you're doing afterwards to ensure that you're getting to where you want to go? So what is that next right step? So you can have the thought brings about this feeling. So if the thought is, yes, I want to be the next VP of my department, and then you start having the feeling of, oh man, that's going to be great. I'm going to be the next VP. I'm going to, have the nice suits, and I'll be able to interact with people and maybe travel the world, and you start having all these feelings. But it's, if you're not doing the next right step, right, which is, what is the actions that are actually necessary to ensure that those thoughts and feelings that you're having are going to come to fruition. So yes, I think the thoughts and feelings can bring you closer, but as long as you also have that next right step, you have those behaviors, and those right attitudes in mind.
Well, Krista's here, and she is KFG, right? So keep
Yeah.
effing going.
Mhm.
So yes, you're muddled, but it doesn't mean that it requires inaction.
Right.
And inaction doesn't have to be applying for a job. It could be talking to Mike and saying, "Hey, can you help me think through this?"
Mhm.
So I think being muddled is not something to be feared. It means that you just need more clarity, and you're not going to get stuck.
Mhm.
You just need more clarity, and then just figure out, to your point, what's the KFG? What's the next best step? How do I keep moving forward? How do I keep exploring it? How do I get curious about what's happening? So muddledness is just for me a place of, I just need some clarity, and I need to figure out what that is. And I can use other people, I can ask questions, etc.
Mhm.
Hopefully that helps.
I agree. Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. The muddledness is oftentimes just part of the process. And it's, how do we deconstruct the muddleness to get clear to where we want to be? And sometimes that takes time. And a lot of times it takes input and suggestions and insight from other people that you trust and have relationships with.
Yeah, you're not alone. You're not alone. So that's why I give a shout out to coaching. You're not alone. Get a coach.
Right.
So for you, Mike, if we summarize, how would you summarize? We went a lot of places today about transformation and the tools we need for transformation, especially visualization. Um, what are your takeaways from today?
I would say, obviously, number one, the process of just really visualizing, where you want to be, embodying it. But one thing that we didn't really chat too much about, and we've only got a couple of minutes left, but it's this idea, it's the fact of, if we want to get better, right, we've got to do better,
Yeah.
right? We've got to do better. And if we're going to decide that, hey, I want to get better at my batting, my BP, at my
It's one
practice,
o'clock.
batting practice. But just doing more batting practice isn't necessarily going to get you there, right? You've got to be able to identify, well, what are the things about my BP or my batting that's going to allow me to actually get better? So in that process, I'm doing something better in the process and on the way to getting better. And the more you can continually do better, the quicker and the faster you can begin to get better.
Well, for me, I'll have throw up the quote here. So hopefully it's for us about our mindset and visualization. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
Yes.
So your mind is a super powerful place. It can work in concert with you. The
Mhm.
muddledness is okay. You can work through it. You can get curious. You can surrender to it. But just know that the mind and the body are here to work with you, to help you achieve. We're not working against it. We're working with it. So that's hopefully the last takeaway for today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's 1 o'clock. Mike, it's too fast.
It goes by too fast. Too fast.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Come to
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
live Wednesdays live tomorrow. I didn't double check who's on there, but everybody's awesome. Room tilters, come and join us tomorrow. We'd love to see you.
All right.
Bye.
Excellent. Bye.